Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome back to the lecture for the MBA 5405 Global Business Environment. I'm Dr. Rajiv Surya. So we're going to be talking today about the strategy of international business. So let me share my screen and we'll get started. Okay, so a brief outline of what we're going to be talking about today. So we'll talk about the definition of strategy, the different elements of strategy. We'll talk about two concepts, profitability versus profit growth, and what's the difference between those. We'll talk about the definition of a firm from a managerial perspective, the firm as a value chain, and we'll talk also about organizational structure, in short, org structure. And then we'll talk about global expansion strategies, core competencies, and then two pressures that a global firm faces, the pressures for cost reduction and pressures for local responsiveness. And finally, we'll combine these pieces together to talk about the four strategic choices that an international business has, right? So the firm has to pick pretty much one of those strategy, and we'll talk about those different ones, four different ones, and explain how to pick one, which is relevant for the firm, of course. So in this lesson, we will focus on the firm itself, and in particular, on the actions managers can take to compete more effectively as an international business, right? So in previous lectures, we talked about the strategy, the environment of international business. Here we'll talk mostly about the firm and the strategy that the firm needs to pursue for global markets. Now, what is strategy? Strategy, by definition, refers to the actions that managers take to attain certain goals of the firm. The traditional objective of a firm is to make profit. So profit maximization is a classical goal of the firm, but there could be different goals of a firm. A firm could be maximizing revenue, not profit. A firm could be seeking market share. A firm could be seeking to maximize managerial utility, that is the satisfaction of its managers, right? So there are different objectives. A non-profit firm or non-profit organization would have a different objective, that is maximizing the welfare of its stakeholders, right? Or different stakeholders in society. So it may not be profit related. So for this course, we'll focus on the assumption that a firm is in business to maximize profit. Now, what is profit? Basically, profit is the difference between revenue and cost. And profitability can be defined as the rate of return the firm makes on its invested capital. So when you invest money as a firm, what is your return on that investment? So that's basically means your profitability. Now, a difference between profitability and profit growth is that you can be profitable in 1 year. Let's say you are 2% profitable, and next year you are still 2% profitable, and third year you are still 2% profitable. So you're still making a profit at the rate of 2%. So this is good. This is interesting because you're making profit, right? If you're making profit in 1 year, you could be making loss in a different year, all right? So profitability basically means the return on your investment, right? So you can be profit or loss in certain years. But what is more interesting is if you're making 2 profit this year, next year you make 3% profit, year after you make 5% profit, and then 7% profit, and so on. So the growth of your profit, that is something more appealing, more interesting, and it's very robust. So profit growth is a percent increase in your net profit over time. If a firm can achieve this, this is really a good objective to achieve. A firm, if you can achieve that, then it means it is making a good business in a sense, right? Now, if you are making profit, that's also good. If your profit is not growing, that's also okay. But if your profit is actually growing from 2%, 3%, 5% year after year, then that's a big deal. Now, for most firms, The main goal is to maximize the value of the firm for its owners, right? This is what most firms seek. Now, how you value an enterprise? You can value an enterprise by focusing on profitability or profit growth. Profitability basically means to reduce cost or to raise the value of your products or raise the prices of your products, depending on elasticity of your product. If a product is elastic, you want to lower prices to make more revenue. For a certain amount of cost, you're going to make more profit. Now, if your product is inelastic, you want to be raising prices. Inelastic means that people need your product, right? If people actually need your product, they absolutely want it and need it. They don't have too much of choices, they don't have alternatives, then they would buy it even if you raise the prices. So in order to raise your revenue, you want to raise prices if products are inelastic. Now, if products are elastic, that is, I have a demand for a product, but the product has a lot of options out there. Consumers can choose from A to B. For example, if someone doesn't want to drink Coke, they can drink Pepsi. So that's a choice. It means that the product has an elastic demand. Now, for those products, if you raise price of Pepsi, maybe people will move away from Pepsi and drink Coke, right? So raising revenue by raising prices for elastic products sometimes do not make sense. Most of the time, it should not make sense. So what you should do for elastic product, basically to raise revenue, you need to lower prices, right? Now, if you lower price, revenue goes up, therefore your profit can go up, right? So there are two ways here to raise your profit. Increase price or decrease price on the revenue side, depending on elasticity. And the other side, the other way is to reduce cost. Now, that's profitability. For profit growth, you can sell more in existing markets, right? So you stay in the United States, you sell more of your products in existing markets. If you service the US market and the European market, you sell more of your product in those markets, right? So that's increasing volume. So that will lead to profit growth, of course. But now what is more interesting is if you can enter new markets. So you sell in the US, can you enter the Chinese market? Can you enter the Indian market? Can you go and sell in Latin America? So how can you bring your products to new markets? This is one of the ways where you can actually grow your profit itself, right? So we're talking about 2% growth, 3% growth, and 5% growth. So profit growth can be achieved if you enter new markets. And a lot of companies want to enter emerging markets like India, China, Brazil, Vietnam, Mexico. So these are the emerging markets. Dubai, so another one, right? So you want to be looking for new markets, hence the subject here of international business. Now, what is value creation? Value creation activities allow a company to achieve superior efficiency, excellent quality, innovation, and customer responsiveness, right? It focuses on product development, investment in human capital, manufacturing, marketing, and or research and development. The way to increase the profitability of a firm is to create more value. So that's the answer. If you want to create more profit growth and more profitability for your company, you want to be creating more value. That's what you need to do. And this whole lecture is about creating more value. So what is that? The more value customers place on your firm's product, the higher the price you can charge. So if you look at the Apple iPhone, people believe that this is an important product. This is a good product. So therefore, people can pay a higher price for the product, right? A Mac computer versus a PC, personal computer. So if people believe that a Mac computer is more stable, can do a lot of graphics design, you can use the computer for programming, for a lot of different things without crashing, then people believe that the Mac computer is a better product. If people believe that, and the product actually performs in a superior fashion, then you can charge a higher price for your product. So this is something very important. The value, there could be intrinsic value, that is what the product is itself performing wise, intrinsic, or it can be perceived value, right? How consumers perceive your product, right? We'll talk about perception a little bit uh, down the road today. So value created is what? Value created, VC, is measured by the difference between value, V, which is the price the firm can charge for your product, given the competition out there, and C, which is the cost of producing that product. So VC, value created, equals to V minus C. The value, that is the price that the firm can charge for the product, minus the cost of production of that product. So the difference would be the value created. This is very similar to profit, right? Profit is revenue minus cost. So you can see it's very similar here. Now, firms can increase the profits by how? By adding value to a product so that customers are willing to pay more for the product, right? So you buy a car, you want to have, let's say, a very nice dashboard in the car. You want to have leather seats, for example, right? Heated seats. So you're adding more value to the product, therefore you will be charged a higher price. Firm can also increase profit by lowering their costs. So if they can produce the product, let's say in Bangladesh, in India, in China, in some other places, as opposed to maybe Germany, which is expensive, the firm can increase the profit. There are two basic strategies to increase a firm's profitability. One is a differentiation strategy, right? So you make your product different, unique. So you have a different feature in your product. You make it performing better compared to your competition. You make it more appealing compared to your competition. So that's one way. The other way is to have a low cost strategy that is making it cheaper. Therefore, your C goes down. Therefore, your VC goes up. Now, a central tenet of the basic strategy paradigm is that in order to maximize its long-run return on invested capital, a firm must pick a point where there is enough demand, right? So you want to go to a market where there is enough demand, right? Number two, you must configure your internal operations so that they support that position. And number three, you must have the right organization structure in order to execute your strategy, right? So you must have demand, you must have good operations, and then you must have a good structure of your organization. Now, let's talk about perception a little bit, right? So these two are two cars. They are both red cars with two doors, all right? But we can see that one is a Ferrari, the other one is a Mitsubishi, right? So what is the perception of the consumer here? Which car is worth more, right? As we can see, the Ferrari here is a different product compared to the Mitsubishi, right? Most people would believe that a Ferrari is worth more and it has more features, it has more appeal, intrinsic value is higher, and also perceived value is higher. The same logic here for those two bags. These are both brown bags. This one is a paper brown bag, and this one is a Louis Vuitton brown bag, right? So this one, the Louis Vuitton bag, is more valuable in the eyes of the consumer. So what is a firm? How can it create value, right? So we have to understand what is a firm first. So a firm is composed of a series of distinct value creating activities. So the firm is like a value chain. You put a lot of pieces together like a chain that creates value, right? Each of these components in the chain creates certain value. And you can break down the firm into two major pieces. One is primary activities, and the second one is support activities. What are primary activities? Primary activities has to do with research and development, production, marketing and sales, and customer service. What are marketing and sales? These are activities associated with getting buyers to buy your product, including how you select a channel for distribution, and also advertising, how you price your product. So these are all marketing channels. And what is customer service? Customer service basically is customer support and how to do repair services and all stuff, all right? After sales service and so on. Now, in the marketing class, you're going to examine all these in further details. What is those marketing channels? How do you do customer service and so on? So for now, what you need to understand is these are the primary activities that will really define a firm. Now, support activities include information systems, logistics, and human resources. Exceptions could exist to these. If I am a firm that deals with IT day in and day out, and this may be my primary activity, in that case, information system would be my primary activity. But in general, for firms, IT or information systems are the support activities. And information systems have to do with process automation and other technology development. Logistics also are support activities, all right? There are two kinds of logistics, inbound and outbound. Inbound logistics include the receiving of goods, warehousing of goods, and inventory control of your input of your raw materials. Outbound logistics are the activities of the firm which are required to get the finished product to the consumer, right? Including warehousing, order fulfillment, procurement, and so on, right? So this is outbound logistics. Now, human resources is another kind of support activities. Human resources have to do with recruiting, development, and compensation of employees. So if you look at this chart, it looks like the firm is a chain of activities, right? So we have primary activities at the bottom, R&D, production, marketing, sales, and customer service. And then support activities here, information system, logistics, human resources that support the firm in delivering all these primary activities. So if I am in the production of, let's say, pharmaceutical drugs, I'm going to make drugs. So I'm going to be doing research and development. That may be my primary activity. I'm going to be producing those drugs. I need to sell and market those drugs, right? And therefore, I need some logistics, transportation, for example. I need human resources, personnel, and I need information technology, information systems to support my firm in the production of these drugs, right? So these are all the support services that will support the primary activities of the firm, right? So put together, this whole thing becomes the company infrastructure. Now, for a small firm, you may not have a lot of these components here, right? For a large firm, these components can be more complex, right? You may have a section that deals with transportation, and another section dealing with marketing and sales, another section based on finance, and you can have another section based on global research and development, and so on and so forth. So it depends on the complexity of the firm. But all in all these things put together makes up your firm. So I just explained that slide. Now, there is one term which is important to understand, right? In order to build this firm, you need to know how to design the architecture of the firm, right? So the term organization architecture is a term that refers to the totality of your firm's organization. That is, when you put your firm together in total, how does it look like? What is the architecture for a building, for example, right? We talked about architecture of your building, but here for the firm, what is the architectural design of your firm itself? And that includes org structure, right? Organizational structure, control systems, incentives, organization culture, processes, and people, right? So these are the different pieces that make up what we call an organization architecture. And we'll explain each of these terms in a minute. Now, org structure refers to the formal division of the organization into different subunits. So how do you divide your organizations into pieces? And also, org structure refers to the location of decision-making responsibilities within that structure. That is, where the decision happens. Who is responsible for the decision-making pieces? Is it the CEO? Is it the finance persons? Is it marketing? who decides, is it a different arm, the global research and development or the global marketing team? So what is the structure and who makes the decision? Org structure also refers to the establishment of integrating mechanisms to coordinate the activities of subunits, including cross-functional teams and also regional committees or pan-regional committees. So what are the different mechanisms that coordinate things together, right? So between marketing and finance, do we have a connection between these two? Sometimes we see in firms, marketing wants to invest money on social media marketing to acquire clients, but then finance have a different priority. The finance department doesn't want to support that initiative. So sometimes finance and marketing, they are dissociated, they don't work together. So do you have a mechanism that makes all these pieces work together? The strategy department, the finance department, the marketing department, and so on. Now let's look a little bit at Apple's organization structure, all right? So who is running the show at Apple? It's the leadership at Apple. Um, you can see the CEO on top here, okay? There's a CEO on top, Tim Cook, right? And then we have a chief design officer, right, who reports directly to the CEO. And the CEO has all these direct reports under him, right? So we have here the senior vice president of retail. We have the senior vice president of internet software and services. We have the senior vice president of software engineering. We have the CFO. We have the hardware engineering general counsel. We have worldwide marketing and so on, right? So we have a chief operating officer on this side. And then we have also reporting directly to the CEO is the VP of Environment, Policy, and Social Initiatives, right? And also the VP of People, the Chief of Machine Learning and AI Strategy, the VP of Marketing Communications, right? So you can see the CEO has a lot of direct reports, that is people reporting directly to the CEO. But you can see here the COO on this side, right, has someone reporting to him. So we see the VP of Greater China, right? The VP and MD, Managing Director of Greater China, who reports directly to the COO, but not to the CEO, right? So you can see that this organization structure has a lot of direct reports, and also those people who are reporting to the CEO has some direct reports for themselves, which mean there are indirect reports to the COO and the CEO, right? Now, there are basically 4 different types of organization structure. One is called a functional organization structure. The functional structure is based on organization being divided into smaller groups, right? So you divide the organization into smaller groups with a specific task or roles. For example, a company could have a working group in information technology, another one in marketing, another one in finance. So here you see you have the board of directors, and then you have the CEO, and then you have marketing and sales. You have production, human resources, finance, R&D, and purchasing. Now, within that sales and marketing department, you have different subunits. You have the sales force, you have e-commerce and direct sales, you have customer service. So all these are subdivisions of the sales and marketing department. Production is divided into component manufacture, product assembly, and quality control. Finance is divided into management accounting and financial accounting, right? So in this organization, departments are divided according to the kinds of functions they're doing, like finance, sales, HR, and so on. So based on their function. So that's one way to have an organization. The second type of org structure that you see is called divisional org structure. Larger companies tend to have that, right? So larger companies operate across several horizontal objectives, sometimes use a divisional organization structure. For example, General Electric. General Electric has various divisions, such as aviation division, transportation division, and renewable energy, and so on. So GE, for example, will have the CEO on top, and then there would be the aviation division. Under aviation, there would be R&D, marketing, and finance, right? And then transportation would have their own R&D, their own marketing, their own finance. And then renewable energy would have their own R&D, their own marketing, and their own finance. So you can see that the finance that serves under renewable energy is not the same finance that serves under aviation, right? So these are different. So here we are dividing it across different divisions. So that's why it's called divisional organization structure. A hybrid org structure, also called a matrix organization, is a blend of functional organization plus a division-based organization. So you have, for example, here the CEO, which is senior management, and then you have the functional structures such as production, sales, finance, R&D, which is the first slide. And then you have production manager A, production manager B, production manager C. So production manager A from the production department, production manager B from the production department, and production manager C from the production department. But also they also have connection with the sales department, with the finance department, with the R&D department. So it becomes like a matrix organization, like you have X and Y axes. So the rows and the columns here, they are all coordinating together. So this point here, for example, would be production manager, so someone from the production department, but also works with the sales department, right? And someone here in finance would be working with the production department. So this is a matrix organization. Very large companies would have these kinds of matrix organization. Sometimes they prefer not to have that. Sometimes they prefer to have a divisional structure. And sometimes they prefer to keep it more simple, have a functional structure based on their functions, right? Now, whenever you have a matrix organization, it means you're reporting to multiple bosses, right? You can have a boss in the production department. If you're someone here, you're the manager. You're reporting to someone in the production department, but also you must be reporting to the sales department. You must be reporting to the finance department. So you may have a boss in production, another boss in sales, and another boss in finance. So that makes it very complicated. So large engineering companies that get new projects, they tend to have this kind of structure, right? So large engineering company, which have, let's say, in a new project in another department, then they can have a need to consult with the finance people, right? They also need to have a communication with the R&D department, right? So I need, if I'm an engineering manager, I need to be responsible for the project budget. So I may need to work with the finance department and report to the finance department about the budget for the engineering project. I may also need to work with the R&D department and have a boss there to oversee the R&D of the engineering project. So I may have two bosses, one in finance and one in R&D, right? So it's a very complex kind of an organization. And finally, we have a flat organization structure, all right? So this is another hybrid kind of organization where things are a little bit flat, right? These ones are for smaller firms, startups, incubators. And if you want to promote innovation, this is the kind of structure that you want to have. So you have what we call a flatarchy organization structure here. It blends a functional structure and a flat structure, resulting in a flatarchy, which allows for more decision-making among the levels of an organization and overall flattens out the vertical appearance, okay? So you don't have a like hierarchy top to bottom, right? This one here is a very top to bottom, right? So it's not a flat structure. It's a very hierarchical top to bottom structure. This one also is a top to bottom structure. This one is a little bit crossover structure. And this one is more flat because here you can have a team that works in this project here. All right, so I'm working, let's say, on creating a fintech product. I am a small firm creating a fintech product. I have 3 people working in this team here, and then another group working into another team. So I'm maybe working on, let's say, payment systems in a fintech department, in a fintech firm, developing a payment products such as like PayPal, and then I can be working in insurance in some other teams. All right, so it's a little bit more flat. So people report to each other on a horizontal basis. Okay, so you can see here, this guy in the middle has someone below him who's reporting, but also is lateral, is flat to this woman here on his side, on his right side, and then someone from the left side is reporting to this guy here. Right, so you have like two people reporting to him on a flat level, right? So these three on top here, they may be, for example, VPs. They're all VPs, vice presidents, and they work in together with each other, right? If in a small team, they may not be vice president. They may be just like a CEO, maybe a co-founder, and maybe a finance guy or the marketing guy, right? So working together on the same level, right? So in this way, what happens in a small organization, I am the CEO, I need to do a lot of jobs. I need to sometimes do the product development. I may need to do the marketing myself. I may sometimes need to work very closely with my co-founder who may be working with a finance person. So it's a little bit all over the place, right? It's a little bit flatter organization structure. So one thing which is good in this structure is that uh, I can have a fresh idea. I go into a different team. I talk about my idea, and people can work on it and get it executed. So it's quick, promotes innovation. But the problem is sometimes get very messy because there's no clear reporting, who's reporting to whom, right? So it works mostly for startups and small companies. All right, so just a quick recall here. So org architecture includes structure, the organization structure. The next piece would be control systems and incentives and culture, peoples, and process, right? So what are controls? Controls are metrics used to measure the performance of subunits and to make judgments about how well managers are running those subunits. So you want to have a control system. Make sure that managers are actually delivering on the job they are supposed to be delivering, right? So let's say you have a target to make a sales of 1,000 units by the end of the month. So do you have a way to measure how well those managers are meeting those targets? All right, so this is what controls are. And if they do well, they get incentives, right? So let's say you're supposed to sell 1,000 units, you end up selling 1,500 units. So you get a bonus as an incentive. And if you don't meet the 1,000 units target, you sell only 900 units, then maybe you lose the bonus, right? So that's the carrot and the stick, all right? The incentive to be the carrot, and then the punishment as a stick, you lose the bonus for that particular month. Processes the manner in which decisions are made and how work is performed within the organization, right? And all culture basically put all these pieces together, right? So what is the organization culture? The norms and the value systems that are shared among the employees of an organization, right? Dominican University, for example, it has the values of study, reflection, community, and service. These are the 4 Dominican values. So when you study at Dominican University, basically you need to focus on the study part, all right? So how you study, that is go and take courses, do assignments, do exams, and all the different pieces, okay? And then you have to reflect on your studies. How well did you perform? What did you learn? How can you apply it to your life? How you can apply it to your job and career? So that's your reflection part. And then community basically is how you can help the community out there. Does it have an impact on the community? All right. So if you become a CEO tomorrow and you're leading an organization from your MBA, it means that your MBA is really helping you out to move up the management ladder and create an impact on society. And finally, service, how can you really have a good intention to serve society? Creation of a product for society, or maybe improve the welfare of society, right? You're interested in climate change, so you join an organization that helps the society. But also it can be giving back to students. As an alumni, tomorrow you can come back and give a lecture to somebody else. So giving a service back to the university. So those kind of things. So that defines the organization culture, right? The norms and the value system which are shared among members of an organization. And by people, we mean not just the employees, but also the different stakeholders. Okay. We also talk about the strategy, which is used to recruit people, compensate them, retain them, right? And the type of people that they are in terms of their skills, values, and orientation, right? So are we hiring, for example, diverse students and diverse faculty, right? Faculty who have been to different parts of the world, right? So someone maybe from Europe, someone maybe from China, someone maybe from India, someone maybe from Africa. So are we recruiting all these different people with different mindsets and trainings and background that can really contribute to giving you the best education, right? So that's what we mean by peoples in process. So in summary then, what is required is a firm needs to have what we call a strategic fit, right? So the strategy of the firm needs to be able to fit with the organization structure, okay, the organization architecture. It also needs to be able to fit with common sense, of course, business sense, and also market conditions. If you can fit all these pieces together, then you can attain superior performance and earn high profits and high return on your capital that you have invested, right? So basically, what is the right fit for this organization? What is the best strategy that works for your organization? Something that works, let's say you choose to have a functional organization structure, maybe it works for your organization, but it doesn't work for a startup, all right? A startup may be a flatter organization. So if you try to implement, let's say, a matrix organization into a small startup, it may not work, it may break down, and vice versa, right? So you want to see what makes sense. So in order to know what makes sense, you need to know the different existence of these org structures and the processes and people and incentive mechanisms and so on, and then apply all the strategy or theory that we're learning to design the firm's profitability strategy. Okay. Now, the next piece, I'm going to be talking about global expansion, right? So a firm that operates internationally, they should be able to expand the market for their domestic product offerings by selling those products in international market, right? So remember, one way to achieve not only profit, but profit growth is to go international, right? Expanding in new markets. So if you want to operate internationally, then you should be able to seek which markets makes most sense for you, right? And you should be able to realize location economies, right? Economies from that particular location, the advantages from that particular location by dispersing individual value creation activities to locations around the world where they can be performed most efficiently and effectively. That is, if production can happen best in China, manufacturing can happen in China, you go to China, right? If design can happen best in Silicon Valley, you come to Silicon Valley, right? So the location, that is, you disperse your value creation activities into the locations which are optimal for that particular value creation activity that you're trying to make. And firms that operate internationally should also be able to realize greater cost economies from experience effects by serving an expanded global market from a central location, thereby reducing the cost of value creation. So you want to be able to have large scale production so that you cut back on your cost, right? And finally, you should be able to earn a greater return by leveraging any valuable skills developed in foreign operations and transfer them back to your headquarters. So this is something very important because sometimes when you have let's say, headquarters in the United States, and then we have a subsidiary of the firm somewhere in an emerging market, it works there, let's say it works in China, but if you don't transfer the knowledge back to the United States, or you don't take the knowledge from the headquarters, you apply it to China, then you're really missing out on your strategy, right? So it is very important to be able to know what are the best practices from the headquarters that can be transferred to the subsidiary and from the subsidiary that can be sent back to the headquarters, because there's a learning effect that takes place, right? It's very important to have that, which also means that some of the strategy that works in China may not work in the US. And some of those strategies that doesn't work, that work in the US may not work in China, right? So we need to have that learning. So that's the learning effect, right? So a company can increase its growth rate by taking goods or services developed at home and then sell them internationally. That's a classical entry mode of exporting that we talked about in previous lectures. Now, the success of firms that expand in this manner is based not only on the goods and services they sell, but also on their core competencies. All right. Core competencies are what? They are skills within the firm that competitors cannot easily match or imitate. So what is your core competency? Basically means, what is your uniqueness? What is it that you have as a firm or as a person that competitors cannot copy very easily, cannot easily imitate or easily match? So what defines you in a very unique way? So for your firm, you have to think about, if I'm going to make pizza, what kind of pizza am I making? If I'm making chicken pizza, I'm making like sausage pizza, I'm making meat pizza. Am I making something different? Or is it just like everybody else? Right? Do I make chocolate pizza? Right? Kids love two things, right? They love pizzas and they love chocolates. Can you put chocolates on pizza and have chocolate pizza? Right? So if you can do that, do you have a patent for that? That is something that will protect your interests so that others cannot really imitate or copy. Right? So how you make yourself unique in such a way that people cannot really copy that. So in your case, you're doing an MBA from Dominican University. You're going to get a US degree. So in China, that's going to be a uniqueness for you, because how many people in China will have the Dominican MBA, right? So that really builds your uniqueness, okay? So the kind of connection you make, the kind of learning you're making, you're learning from Harvard Business School cases. So how many people in China can really learn from Harvard Business School cases, right? So that defines your uniqueness to a certain extent. So core competencies enable the firm to reduce the cost of value creation, the C, and also create perceived value, that is increase the V, in such a way that you can charge premium pricing for your product, right? So if you can be able to improve the perceived value of your product, then you can raise the price. Now, this is a quick thinking for you, right? What are the core competencies of these companies, right? McDonald's. What is it that they are really good at, right? When they started, it was all about fast food, and today still, it's all about fast food. So the focus is on fast, to create food very quickly for people who do not have time. So when it started back in the days, people just wanted to have something quick. So McDonald's came with the idea of having a burger, a hamburger, which is very fast, right? In a few minutes, you get a hamburger delivered to your car. People were waiting outside, and then they get the hamburger delivered to their car. So people really love that concept because it is different from going into a restaurant, sitting down, ordering a food, which takes time, and then get out, right? So the fast concept was very important for McDonald's, right? Right now too, when you go into a McDonald's, you can sit in your car, you drive through, in a few minutes, you get your food ready. Even if you go inside it, depending on the location, in New York City, it may take a long time. In some places, in the big cities, it may take a longer time. But in some smaller places, it may be very quick. So the idea is to focus on the fast. Procter & Gamble, it's all about brand marketing, right? The focus on brands. This is a huge company. They have brands pretty much everywhere for everything, from shampoo to soap to perfume to toiletries to everything. Walmart, what is the core competency of Walmart? Walmart is renowned for low prices for its product, right? Low prices, but that's not its core competency, right? In order to make the prices low, they are really good at one thing, and that one thing is logistics, right? So those Walmart trucks, they have like huge trucks that go on the highway like 24 hours a day just to deliver to different Walmart centers. When the shelf goes down empty, they just replenish that overnight. So Walmart has an extremely superior logistics compared to many companies in the United States and then globally too. Starbucks is not about just coffee. Starbucks is about a lifestyle, right? A lifestyle of what? Of freshly brewed coffee. Every time you go to a Starbucks, the barista serving you the coffee is going to make a coffee right in front of you, right? Because the model is about fresh coffee, not just any coffee. It's not like a coffee which stays there whole day and then you just take your cup and go and put the coffee in your cup from a jug. It's not that. It's freshly brewed coffee. That is, they're going to brew it right away in front of you and serve you that coffee. And also, it's about a lifestyle. Okay, we'll talk about Starbucks a little bit later. Toyota is about providing low cost and high quality, affordable car pretty much for the middle class people, right? So that was the main core competency, to focus on that combination of higher quality and lower cost, right? Something affordable for people. Boeing is one of the most multi-sourced company in the world, right? Um, they have their parts made all over the world. And we saw in the lecture one on globalization how Boeing gets its components and parts from different parts of the world. Dell Computers. Dell is all about inventory management, right? So if you want to have a Dell computer, you don't go in the store in the US to purchase a Dell computer. Um, the best way to buy a Dell computer is to have it online. And you can order the pieces, components, whichever you want, you customize it to your needs. You want a, let's say 1 terabyte of storage space hard disk. You can put that in your specification, right? You want higher RAM memory, you can add that. So you can customize and order that because Dell is good in inventory management, right? They don't have a bunch of computers and parts on the shelf in the retail stores. So you do the inventory management online, you do your order online, and then because of their good inventory management, they can supply that, deliver the computer to your home. And Apple is all about graphics. When they started, it was all about graphics, right? How to make a computer different from different computers out there, right? So they were focused pretty much on graphics and design and those pieces. Even Apple products today, an iPhone or a Mac, it's all about the design of it, right? The graphics of it and the performance that improves the quality. So these are the core competencies of different firms. Sometimes those core competencies may not be very obvious, but this is what they specialize on, they focus on to differentiate themselves from the rest out there in the competition. So for your company, think about what makes you unique. If you're not doing something unique, the business will not grow, will not become very successful. You got to create that niche, unique market for yourself, right? Otherwise, it's just plain competition. Now, location economies. Firms can benefit by basing each of these value-creating activity at different locations, right? At locations where there are low political risk, low economic risk, cultural conditions are favorable, including the cost of inputs, the factor costs, which are most amenable to making the production possible. Okay, so questions you may want to ask is, where are the best designers? Is it from Italy? If it is from Italy for clothing, then you design in Italy, right? Where is the low-cost labor, or where the skilled labor? If you have low-cost labor in Vietnam, you do the assembly in Vietnam. If you have the skilled IT labor in India, use the Indian labor, right? And also see who can provide you with the best marketing strategy, best consulting strategy, best R&D strategy. So if you look at it this way, then you see that your firm is being split over the whole globe. It's not in one particular location. It's not just in San Francisco. Your firm can be based in San Francisco, but it has manufacturing in China or Vietnam or India, assembly somewhere else, procurement somewhere else, R&D somewhere else. So that way, by definition, you're becoming a global organization. And by becoming a global organization, you can realize economies of scale. Okay, so the location economies are those economies that arise from performing a value creation activity in the optimal location for that activity, wherever in the world that may be. Now, sometimes American students have a hard time to understand this concept, right? So someone who has a firm in Ohio, in the Midwest of the United States, they will think that we need to produce everything in Ohio, right? Because they want to retain the jobs in Ohio, right? So this is what I tell some students, that you need to think a little bit broader, because the jobs in Ohio may be important, yes, but it is at a higher cost. You're going to be making a loss. Somebody from Mexico is going to disrupt you tomorrow and take away your business. So if your optimal production location is in Mexico, you got to go to Mexico. If your design can best be done in Germany, you go to Germany. If manufacturing can best be done in China, you go to China, right? If consulting and sales and marketing can best be done in the United States, in San Francisco, or in Mumbai, in India, you go to San Francisco or you go to Mumbai. So whatever the optimal location is, wherever it is, you should be pursuing that in order to make a profit and also make profit growth and be successful and be different from your competition. Okay, so that's the main lesson here. So which means that by taking advantage of local location economies in different parts of the world, a multinational firm creates a global web of value creation activities, right? Under this strategy, different stages of the value chain are dispersed to those locations around the globe where perceived value is maximized or where the costs are minimized. So you want to maximize the value and minimize the cost so that you can get a higher VC. However, though, we need to understand that sometimes there could be transportation costs, there could be trade barriers that can make things a little bit complicated. And then, for example, we talk about if there is an import tariff, for example, on a country, then you may not want to trade with that country. You may want to do FDI in that country, right? The entry mode will be a choice of FDI for indirect investment as opposed to exporting, because the trade barriers make it more complicated to exporting to that country. And secondly, political risk also must be assessed, right? When you assess a location. Right now, for example, there is a war in Europe, right? So Ukraine, Russia issues, there's the high political risk in that region of the world, right? So you must be making an assessment of those political risk and economic risk before you can actually make your production location there, right? So you have to take into account all these pieces. Now, the other piece related to that is the experience effects, all right? So what's an experience curve? Experience curve refers to the systematic reduction in your production costs that have been observed to occur over the life of your product, right? So on this graph here, you can see the cost per unit of production decreases every time the production goes up. So production goes from X1 to X2, your cost decreases from C1 to C2, right? That is, as you increase your production more and more, you're riding down this curve. And you want to be riding down this curve. So this is your average cost curve, the production cost per unit. That's the average cost. So as you get location economies, you get learning effects, you will write down your experience curve. So economies of scale refers to the reduction in unit cost, that is the average cost of production, achieved by producing a large volume of a product. So the more larger is the X2, you can see if you go further to the right, the cost per unit is going to decline significantly. So this is an exponential decay, right? It is decaying exponentially. Now, how do you get economies of scale? You should be able to produce large amount because a large volume helps you to spread your fixed cost. Your fixed cost, let's say it is $100 for 10 units. But if you produce 20 units, you have your average cost going down because your fixed cost, which is $100, is now being spread over 20 units, right? So before it was $100 for 10 units. Now it is $100 for 20 units. Okay, so your cost has gone down from 10 to 5, right? So this is how you spread your cost when you increase your volume of production. Economies of scale also include the ability of large firms to employ increasingly specialized equipment and personnel, right? So as you become large and large, you can employ someone, let's say in your engineering department, you can employ someone in analytics. You can employ someone in AI and machine learning. So you can have very specialized personnel in your department. In a finance company, you can have accounting, managerial, and financial separated out. You can have a fintech branch. You can have finance and policy, right? So you can have a specialized department and personnel and also equipment, right? If you're a medical company, you're a large medical company, you can have different sorts of personalized or specialized, I would say, medical equipment. So moving down your experience curve allows your firm to reduce the cost of creating value. Okay, so you need to create value and you need to reduce the cost of that creating value. So you will move down the experience curve. Serving a global market from a single location is consistent with moving down your experience curve and establishing a low-cost position. Now, just like I said earlier, subsidiary skills are very important, right? So if I am Apple, I have Apple in China, so that becomes a subsidiary, right? A firm, which is an Apple firm, it belongs to Apple, but it's operating in China. So this is Apple China, it is a subsidiary. So managers must recognize that valuable skills that could be applied elsewhere in the firm can arise anywhere in the firm's global network. That is, the learning effect that happens, or the skills that managers or employees have in Apple China, let's say in Beijing. So the Apple in Beijing, they are having some learning that takes place there. Those people have certain skills and knowledge that may not be available here in the corporate center in San Francisco, right? So managers need to understand that, right? So which means that you need to send your US managers to China to learn those things, and then send those Chinese managers to the US to learn the US way of doing business too. And then those transfer of best practices will help the Apple in the US and Apple in China become a better company, right? Which leads to higher profit growth. So in summary, managers need to keep in mind the complex relationship between profitability and profit growth when making strategic decisions about pricing, right? At the end of the day, when you invest more, you may be able to change the perception. For example, here, McDonald's, that was the old McDonald's, and this is the new McDonald's. You can see this one on the left has wooden chairs, right? Plastic chairs and tables. And on the right-hand side here, it looks like a good business lounge, right? And which one is perceived to have more value to the customer, right? So obviously, we're talking about the one on the right here, the new McDonald's. Okay, so increase the value, the perceived value, which also means you need to invest more, therefore your cost will actually go up but your value is going up much more higher than your cost. So at the end of the day, your value creation is going to be higher, right? So just a quick recap. Economies of scale is a reduction in your unit cost of production because of large scale production. So you go down your average cost curve, you write down the experience curve. Learning effect is a cost saving due to learning. Example, transfer of best practices from headquarters to subsidiaries and vice versa. And location economies are cost reductions due to producing at an optimal location, wherever that location may be. All right, so remember, these are the three concepts which are important as part of your global strategy. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing here for a minute. I'm going to stop recording too, and then we'll talk about the second part in a few minutes.